Hello and welcome. You're watching the Global Reset on CNBC-TV18 Prime with me, Prashant Nair. The world's aircraft fleet is about to double. 42,000 new planes will take to the skies in the next 15 years. Asia is now the center of gravity. China and APAC together will account for nearly half of all deliveries. But here's the question. Can we, India, stop being just a buyer of aircraft and become the builder of wings, engines, smarter cockpits, etc., for the world, for ourselves and for the world? From aerostructures to avionics, from engine power to MRO hubs. The global supply chain, hopefully, will be reset and India will be a big player. The sky is opening up. The question, will India grab the opportunity or let it fly past? We're going to talk about this in greater detail. Joining me today to discuss this hopeful reset in the aerospace manufacturing arena are two veterans who've led global giants in India. Srinivasan Dwarakanath is former MD and CEO of Airbus India. Currently, he is serving as the Director General of the Aerospace India Association. Dr. Bala Bharadvaj is former MD of Boeing's Engineering and Technology Center in India. He's now an independent aerospace expert and SAE fellow. Well, this is a topic which I felt needed more than the usual 25 minutes that we have on this program. So what we're doing today is breaking this topic up into two 25-minuters, so two 25-minute programs. Today we do part one, and tomorrow at the same time, at 12 noon on CNBC Prime, we will be airing part two. So without further ado, let's get going. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us. You know, before we get to the nuts and bolts and where India is in terms of the manufacturing part of it, let's just identify how large is this market, presumably very large. I mean, we're talking about planes and aircrafts, but you know, I put some numbers in terms of how the fleet is going to double over the next 15 years. Mr. Dwarakanath, if you want to kick this off with your own assessment of what we call in investor lingo as TAM.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, for giving us the opportunity to talk about aerospace. This is a passionate subject of mine. A golden rule in, especially on the commercial aerospace, is that every 15 years, the air traffic doubles. All right. So that's been happening right from the 1970s. And even after COVID, we saw a dip, but it is coming back in terms of the passenger air traffic. Yes, there is a huge sort of in a number of aircraft that you said, 43,000 aircraft to be delivered over the next 20 years. And Asia Pacific is going to take the major chunk of those deliveries as well. But if you look at on the aerospace side itself, normally the aircraft OEMs or the engine OEMs, they normally outsource 80% of their activity. So if you look at Boeing, Airbus, Embraer on one side, and the engine companies like Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, Safran GE on the CFM, and if you look at their outsourcing volumes, today that'll come to about 200 billion, per year. And today, a lot of these companies are looking to outsource that in Asia, like countries like Turkey, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, and all the others. Some of the supply chain in the West are having difficulties to ramp up to what is required by the OEM. So there is a plenty of opportunity, for India to really tap on this market. So today we are quite small in terms of what we do in exporting on the commercial aerospace segment. But with this huge volume, there is a plenty of opportunity for India to capitalize and grow this market.
Numbers focus the mind, Dr. Dwarakanath. You said, so annually, $200 billion. Is that the number?
$200 billion would be the outsourcing volume. I'm only talking about the commercial aerospace part at this point in time.
Yeah. Dr. Bala, you want to weigh in? How you think about this?
Yeah, no, I think what Dwarakanath addressed is the commercial side. There is, of course, the military side of the market. And that is not so international. Although there are companies in India who are making parts for military aircraft as well. There is also the desire and the programs that are in pipeline that are to be developed within India for the HAL and basically the Indian Air Force. So that adds to the potential market that you are referring to. It adds to the opportunity space. So it's not only the commercial, which is much more visible, I think, to the people, but there is also the military opportunity side, which is very much becoming available for people to participate.
Got that. Now let's break this down, and we'll do this on both the commercial side and the military side as well. When we see look at this opportunity, Mr. Dwarakanath, break it down by value, right? Where is this opportunity? This $200 billion. Where is the value? Which parts of the aerospace manufacturing, process does most of the value capture lie in? Go on, sir.
I think if you look at it, so aerospace OEMs, then you have the engine OEMs, right? So the two main, providers, so, and in aerospace itself, in OEM, you have, three sort of main areas. You have the aerostructures, which is an important part. And then you have the systems and avionics, which is the other part. And then you also have all the cabin and all the related, areas of development as well, which you're looking at. So aerostructures itself will be approximately between 35 and 40%. Again, this is true for the commercial side. And increasingly, you see that more and more activities, are coming on the systems and avionics because, flights are becoming connected systems, globally. And within the aerostructures itself, of course, you have the fuselage, you have the tailplane, you have the wings, these and landing gears. These are all critical areas. And what is interesting to look at is that if you look at aircraft OEMs, 40% of the aerostructure activity is kept inside the OEM. 40% is approximately with the tier ones, and the remaining 20% is with the tier two, tier threes, and tier fours. So that's why in the OEMs, when they start outsourcing, aerostructures is one of the areas they do. However, if you look at systems, avionics, that sort of area, it's only about 10 to 15% is done by the OEM themselves. And really 60% is done actually with the tier ones. And then the remaining about 15, 20% is with all the tier two, tier threes, and tier four. So that's an area, which I think, is coming up. But that's where I think Indian suppliers can really enter and grow. Today, about 70% of the Indian suppliers are predominantly on aerostructures, because that's an easy place to start in terms of machining or sheet metal, how do you do that, assemblies and things like that. But later on, when now there is an opportunity to move into the avionics and systems, and that's going to be the way forward, for the people to come. The last but the important area is the MRO, but that's a service area, and India is slowly trying to build the capability and the capacity in the MRO for our own needs. But it also can act as a hub in this region, for MRO as well. That's a potential area where suppliers are getting into as well.
Right. So the big one is aerostructures, right? As you said, Mr. Dwarakanath. And
yes, the big one is aerostructures as we see it.
Can I extrapolate the numbers then? $200 billion total annual kind of market opportunity, right? So, $80 billion, 40% is aerostructures. Of that 80 billion, you said 40% OEMs keep for themselves, do it in-house. The rest of the 60% is outsourced, is given out as orders, right? All kinds of companies. So we're talking about $50 billion as an aerospace opportunity.
Sure. I think, that's again given to the tier ones will have the lion's share, and then comes the tier two, tier threes, and others as well. But slowly, we are seeing that tier ones are also increasingly, outsourcing those activities as well. So moving forward, yes, I think aerostructures is an easy place to start. But again, there is also huge volumes on the, systems and avionics as well. But that would require a lot of upfront work, from research and R&D as well. But that's another potential area. So I don't want to say that aerostructure is the main area to focus. Yes, that's been traditionally the main area because most of the suppliers coming into aerospace are coming from automotive industry. So which is a place to start. But then there is also a good potential to get into system and avionics as well.
And is this, the 50 billion opportunity, and I'll come to avionics in just a bit, is this very concentrated? I mean, are these like in commercial, you got Boeing, you got Airbus, and both of you have sort of, spent lifetimes in these companies. But even in terms of suppliers, is it very concentrated?
Yes, in the sense that you have.
Say yes.
Yeah, a tier one supplier. Okay, go ahead, Bala.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of concentration, I would say yes, largely because you have a need for consistent supply, very reliable supply over a long period of time. When you talk about aerostructures, usually aircraft are made, they run for 15, 20, 30 years of production. So you want to develop a supplier who is absolutely reliable and available for you in the long run. So once somebody gets established, it is difficult to justify moving away from that particular supplier. Now, the good thing is the tier one suppliers generally, bring in next level suppliers to support their activities. And that's happening in India as well. We have tier one suppliers who are, leveraging, smaller companies for specific parts within, they are creating a supply chain basically for whatever it is that they have signed up to doing with the OEM. One other point I wanted to kind of touch upon, when you talk about the percentage split between the airframe and the other parts, whether it's the engine or the avionics and systems, you will find that when you come to the military side, the systems and avionics tend to be a higher proportion. There the platform itself is pretty small, but what you need to do, in terms of the operational requirement is very, very high capability in the awareness of what is going on around you, the ability to initiate action. If you are going to, for example, if you are a fighter, you want to not only be able to protect yourself from the enemy, but you also want to be able to, let's say, jam somebody else's radar. Yeah. So there is a lot more avionics and electronics that goes into in a military platform. So proportionately, the opportunity for avionics and electronics is higher on the military platform compared to what is happening on the commercial side. So these are, the commercial and the military, they are complementary, but they are really, two parallel worlds, and they are not identical. The opportunity space is a little bit different when you compare the commercial side of the aerospace to the military side of the aerospace.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense, and it's glad you highlighted that. I had to take a quick commercial break, gentlemen. We'll continue this discussion on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We are discussing the scale, scope, and opportunity in aerospace manufacturing with two veterans in the field who've really seen this, industry evolve globally, and of course now are helping build this ecosystem, manufacturing ecosystem in the country. Thank you both of you for waiting. I want to just restart at one particular point, Mr. Dwarakanath, if you can come in here. So from what I understand is that in India, you basically have subcontracting work right now, which is happening. You don't have companies who are directly supplying to the Boeings and the Airbus. So companies in India are supplying to companies who are based outside of India, who in turn are supplying. So, what's the tail like in this business? On a different kind of note, I was doing this show on semiconductors, and someone said, well, to make chips, it's like a global industry. You got parts coming in from all kinds. whatever, 30, 40 countries, small entities involved, large entities involved. But of course, we only hear about the fab and such. Is it something similar, or this is much more concentrated in that sense? What's the tail like? Go on. You're on mute, Mr. Dwarakanath. Sorry, you have to unmute yourself.
So first thing, thank you. First thing I would say is that Indian companies here, who are working in aerostructures or avionics and others, they do supply to both Boeing and Airbus as well as the tier ones and tier twos, right? So as I mentioned earlier, in aerostructure, 40% is kept in the OEM, 40% is with tier ones, and then the remaining 20%, is with tier twos and tier threes. So there are a lot of Indian companies who are at the tier twos and tier threes and who deliver to the tier one companies. In some cases, they directly deliver to Airbus and Boeing at certain assemblies and certain sub-assemblies and things like that. So both of these things are happening, for sure. But the tail, of course, because many of the Indian companies, have started after 2005, especially the private companies, they are all growing up, and still most of the aerospace companies are around about 1,000 crores or less. So that way, you will see that a significant part of them are still as tier twos and tier threes, delivering to their respective customers, who then deliver to Airbus or Boeing. But some of them, directly deliver to Airbus as well. That's the sort of first point. So in terms of the value, 40, 40, and 20 on aerostructures, but it is a different game when it comes to system and avionics. To be noted.
Yeah, you said 2005 is when most of these companies sort of started. Private companies started.
Yeah.
Was it a reason?
Yeah, there is a trigger. Exactly. See, there are two reasons. One is that between 2004 and 2006. A lot of airlines from India ordered aircraft from Airbus and Boeing. Where if you look at Air India, if you look at Kingfisher, if you look at Indigo, if you look at Deccan, if you look at Jet Airways, all these guys ordered between 2004 and 2006. So there was a huge amount of confidence saying that, hey, the aerospace aviation is going to grow, so aerospace is also going to grow. And also, after 2000, many companies, who were working in the IT sector, they had engineers, they were all working on UITK problem. So they were not sure what they should be doing, and things were going down. They saw aerospace engineering services as being a great area to come in as well. And automotive industry was going down at that time. So out of people who are manufacturing in automotive industry and people who are in IT services jumped into aerospace. So you could see a spike in engineering services companies as well as aerospace manufacturing of components starting in 2005. That's one. And you could see that again now, because in 2023, India ordered the maximum number of aircraft from any country in the world, right? So 23, 24, there are good orders. So there is a lot of confidence. And this is a second wave which is happening as well. That's the rationale there.
And you mentioned less than 1,000 crores. Most companies are under the 1,000 crore kind of sort of threshold. This is by revenues, annual revenues?
By revenues, yes.
Okay. Could you give us a sense of, without naming the company if you don't want to, the biggest revenue company in the country in this field?
In this field, at the top of the head, I'm not sure, but they probably are in the region of between 5 and 6,000 crores. But I'm only talking about the private players here coming in. But again, what happens is that in aerospace, most of the suppliers are working on commercial and defense as well. Some of them are pretty much focused on the global value chain. Some of them very much focused on the defense, but they have both the areas that they work on as well. But here again, with this growth, we are expecting that would be a 10x growth in the next 10 years.
Prashant,
yes,
could I
please.
jump in here?
Please.
I wanted to add one more aspect. When we talk about that time period, 2005, plus or minus a few years, we also had a huge amount of interest in growing the military aircraft within India, procurement in India. And the military procurement came with something called offset requirement. So if India is going to spend $1 billion, for example, to procure any aircraft, then the Indian government would say you need to do X amount of work within India. And that number has varied over the years. For example, if the offset requirement was, do 30% of the work in India, that became a motivating factor. It was a requirement from the military side, but it also became a motivating factor for some of the aerospace, the Indian aerospace companies, as well as some of the engineering services companies, to say that, hey, we would like to capture some of that work because the government is mandating that part of that work be done within India. And I remember this very clearly because 2006, 2007 is when we were talking about the P-8I procurement. That was a big order. There was also the MMRCA, the multi-role combat aircraft. That proposals were going in, and both these had requirements of a huge amount of work to be done from within India. And this was very well publicized, and there were a lot of companies who said we want to be part of that process because the numbers involved again were in multiple billions of dollars.
Absolutely, yeah. And just to add to it, we also saw a lot of global companies, setting up their GCCs in India as well during that period, right? So in the 1990s, we had GE who had the Jack Welch Technology Center, and then a lot of others, Collins, Airbus, Boeing, Rolls-Royce, you name them, they all have their global capability center. So that really pushed engineering technology on one side, but some of them had manufacturing as well, like Collins. And then the biggest advantage was that all of them had procurement teams. Then they were able to develop the suppliers. So that saw a good growth between 2005 and now in terms of having the necessary, ingredients to really now grow the aerospace sector, globally.
Can I get a number from you, Mr. Dwarakanath? What's the size of the Indian aerospace manufacturing industry revenues annually?
Annually, in terms of revenues. Now, again, I'll probably touch initially the commercial side, and then we'll look at the defense, because defense is always a bit difficult to really know. On the commercial side, today, approximately about $2 billion worth of revenues are exported from Indian manufacturing companies. Here, I'm not including the global capability centers of the global MNCs. So just from Indian companies, that's the sort of volumes being exported. So if you then, I know from there, you get an idea of the sort of revenues on the commercial side, right? On the defense side, it's a bit more tricky, because there are many companies who are working on it. Some are able to export, but some are working on the Indian side. So I don't have a good number there.
No, absolutely. And $2 billion worth of exports, and how many companies, sir?
I would say in terms of the export side, again, it's probably in terms of manufacturing, that's export. I'm not really looking at the engineering services on this one, Prashant. I need to, so some of the services are included as well. I would say somewhere, because Airbus and Boeing has developed about 150 plus suppliers. And on the export market, it should be somewhere between 50 and 75, but it can be even more. But what we know of is somewhere in that region, Prashant.
So this is 150 supplies developed by Boeing and Airbus. These are private Indian companies.
These are private Indian companies, but they work across several areas: engineering, manufacturing, and service.
Sure. And 50 to 75 companies which export sort of products. This is out of this 150 companies, or they're separate?
No, they will all be part of this 150 company.
Okay. So 150 is the total pool, and
it's something we are studying at the moment. We don't have the definitive number. That's what I put in there as well.
Dr. Bala, on defense, of course, I mean, the numbers will be much larger in that sense. And of course,
I think the numbers are larger. Unfortunately, I don't have a number to share with you.
Yeah.
But on the defense side, majority of the manufacturing is done by the PSUs.
Yeah.
So you have the HALs, you have the BEL, BEML, and so forth, who are involved in the manufacturing. But there has been a push on the defense side going back to 5-8 years now, where these larger PSUs are actually actively developing
Yeah.
local suppliers, local private companies, because they have kind of a mandate to say that, look, don't try to do everything. Try to bring in some private players into the mix. But the number is a little more tricky. At least I don't have it on the top of my head.
No problem, no problem. But I think this is a fabulous, primer 101 for me at least, and hopefully for our viewers as well. So this is the conclusion of part one. As I said, we are sort of breaking this up into two parts. So this is part one. Gentlemen, thank you both for sort of joining us on this. And of course, both of you do stay on, because we're going to come back and sort of continue this conversation on part two. For now, it's goodbye from me. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 Prime.